coming to the next, so Professor, how can you tell us more about the youth and community development through the innovation and entrepreneurship?
Yes, I have a presentation. Can you create entrepreneurs and innovators from ordinary people and communities? And that is the field of my research and my work. I absolutely believe so. I believe we have quite a lot of talent out in the communities and that we are not really tapping. I am Rajesh Nair. I'm a professor of practice at Asia School of Business, which is a new business school that MIT Sloan just started in Kuala Lumpur with Central Bank of Malaysia, and I also work at MIT. Can you, next slide?
Next slide, please.
Okay. What if you can create 10 times the number of entrepreneurs in your community? Would it create 10 times of employment, startups? Do they create more wealth? Do they create more jobs, more peace? So the world is trying to create. Many countries are trying to create more entrepreneurs in their community, but there is a top-down approach that is being currently taken, which is not being very effective. Next slide, please. So when you look at most of the programs that you see in the world to create entrepreneurs, they're primarily looking at some of the aspiring entrepreneurs. And they take them in and take them through incubators, accelerators. You have government policies and funding and such, just to build up those aspiring entrepreneurs. And I believe, next slide, I believe the real value is in the larger population. How do we make them aspire to be entrepreneurs, and so that the rest of the mechanism that the world has set up can train them and be more productive? So what is stopping people, an average person from starting a company or maybe even thinking about starting a company? Next slide. There are three major factors that I see. One is internal, which is primarily the self-efficacy, the confidence to take on unknown challenges that you currently build through trying, failing, learning, and repeating. That's how you build your competence. Other one is the ecosystem, how that is your culture, your society, the availability of mentors and such. And I think the biggest value that we're leaving behind is interventional. If you could get involved in these kids' lives when they're 10 years old and slowly change their life trajectory by a few degrees, imagine where they could be when they are in their young adults, when they're young adults. And this is the largest ability, this acceleration or this, we're not actually totally utilizing this ability. So my focus is to see how early can you get involved in these kids' lives and change. And when as part of this was my thesis at MIT, and when I talked to my advisor, he asked, so how are you going to create this? Next slide, please. So I went on back into my own life. I was born in a little village in India, lower middle class family. Grew up, did a lot of things in engineering and starting companies in New England area, and I'm where I am. So when he asked me, can you go back and model your own life? Look at the stages that you went through, or look at the transitions that you went through. Look at the triggers that changed your transition in your life. Can you package it, model it, and test it out on kids and see if it really makes the same change in others? And so this is a model that we created from there. The first stage is that of a maker. If I ask you how many people have made anything in the last 1 year, most adults would say nothing. We make a mean PowerPoint and means a spreadsheet, but we haven't made things. This is the phase where when we were kids, we used to do with cardboard and bottle caps and such. We used to imagine things and create things. None of them really worked, but it didn't really matter because it was about creativity and expression. And we created this program, next slide please, which kind of, so we called a 48-hour program of Zero to Maker, where we teach kids in 48 hours how to ideate, design mechanical parts, put together electronics, learn to do coding. They had to make a product. They had to make a movie. They had to make a presentation, all in 48 hours. Please continue. So these are 17-year-old kids, right out of high school in Kuala Lumpur. And they learn 3D printing and mechanical design and all those things in 2 days. So some of the projects these are all very silly things. It's a baby cradle which kind of automatically moves when you put the baby in there. Or of course, none of them solve any world problems. But you are taking these kids who never thought they could do all these things and putting them on a place where they suddenly realize they could. And continue, next one. So how young can you go with this program? Next one, please. This is 6th through 11th graders. Just continue playing, please. They're making a robot that kicks a ball and goalpost that scores a goal. These are 6th graders, okay, 11, 12 years old. They don't have an engineering degree. They did exactly the same thing. Some of these things are 3D printed, laser cut, programmed, and such. And these are the kids. So if we could do this at that age, what could we do? The largest impact that I see is in girls, because most of these girls have been told that they could not do certain things in many of the cultures that I go to teach these things. And the moment they realize they could do just as good as anyone else, it completely changes the way they think about what they could do. Please, next one. So, next one. Yeah. But these things, I used to carry 2 check-in bags, one with 3D printer, a whole bunch of electronics and computers and such to go into these rural places to teach these kids. And I believe today you don't really have to. Do you really need a large makerspace to do all these things? I think when we were kids, we never actually had a makerspace. We were making things with what we had. Next slide. So here we are in India, in a village, teaching kids how to make things with what's available. Newspapers and paper clips and all kinds of things. They're making structures with things like that. Next one. This is just 3 days back. I was in Jakarta teaching kids how to make things from trash. They were learning to make musical instruments. They learned basically they had to make a wind and a string instrument, and they had to learn the physics of vibration, music, pitch, frequency, all those kind of things in such a short time. And they had to play together, by the way. And next one. And very interesting thing is, we are all scared of black boxes. Any of these kind of things that you see, we don't know what's a ghost in the box. We make them open up boxes. These girls in villages, we ask them to open up old, discarded electronics just to get the fear out of opening these black boxes. Please, next. So we are creating these maker spaces that we could go into rural communities with $0 and then slowly build the ability for them to design and make things, and then the next $100 makerspace and $1,000 makerspace and such. Next one, please. The next stage is that of an innovator. Innovator basically identifies a problem and solves. So we teach design thinking as a primary tool to teach them these things, to define need and ideate solution. Next one. So we take them to communities like markets and wet markets in Kuala Lumpur, please. A home for kids with cerebral palsy in India, and we had to actually live their life, understand, build empathy, and understand the problems and develop solutions. Next. And the last stage is that of an entrepreneur. Now that if you know a problem that you see as an opportunity, how do you monetize it? How do you commercialize it? And that's the last stage. Next. So here we took kids out into a home for visually impaired girls, and they found these girls had this issue of walking into low branches and such. We ideated on things, and they came up with this idea for a torchlight for the blind. Next slide. Please. What in the last 1 year, these kids went and started a company called Torch It. They created this product, made thousands of these devices, and distributed to visually impaired people in Ahmedabad, in Gujarat. Please, one more. So these things, you can actually take these kids from almost from without ever thinking they could be entrepreneurs, all the way to becoming innovators and entrepreneurs in such short time. Please, next. Next. So, please, go ahead. There are four. So you're taking from someone who's uninitiated to a maker who can hack things and make things that are feasible, to an innovator who can hack problems, and to entrepreneurs, next one, who can hack opportunities and make things all the way viable. And this is the journey that we take these kids through. Next one, please. In a experiment we did in a place where we taught a few kids, 50 kids, and 4 years back. And earlier this year, we were wondering what happened to these kids. And we found that, please, there were participants and non-participants. Over the first year, after we had the intervention, 10 startups came in from a school that had 1 student startup in the previous 12 years. And next one. And next, continue. What we find is that the friends, they brought in, the people who attended the workshop brought in their friends and slowly started a community within their college. That is the ecosystem. That is how you start to build an environment where entrepreneurship is promoted within the group. Next one, please. So this could actually create sustainable change in individuals as well as in communities. Next. So how does it all come up to SDGs? This kind of approach starts to impact in a few people. Next. In their internal, the first impact would be on their own immediate abilities. Next. And then to the surroundings. And then these are innovators and entrepreneurs. They can solve problems. They've been trained to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. So they should be able to solve much larger problems than their local ones. Next. So the core of all these things is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the confidence that you build where you feel you can take on unknown challenges. And that only can be done through actually taking them through doing and failing and figuring out and expanding your capability. Next. So I'd like to propose a few things, call for action. One is, how do we target this untapped majority in our communities? Imagine if you could create a whole bunch of more entrepreneurs in your community. Next. How do we start them early in their life and take them through this tested process for Zero to Entrepreneur framework? Provide low-cost makerspaces where they could actually start learning, creating these things with very little, and hopefully enable them to solve SDGs. And I'm really interested in actually working with any groups or on these kind of projects, and I welcome any contact. Thank you so much.
Thank you.